Company featured. Welcome to this Stockbox interview.
Andrew Bell is joining me again for part 2 of the Q&A with shareholders who've sent questions in. So Andrew, welcome back again. You ready to go?
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to the time when we can have real-time physical meetings in London where people can come and speak to us face-to-face. But in the meantime, thank you so much for hosting this.
Okay. Now, what are your funding requirements for the next year, and how will you be able to meet them?
We have our biggest funding requirement that we received was in the second half of this calendar year, or in the sort of quarter that will be ending November. And we've come through that without difficulty raising funding, and we have plenty more. And we already know that Elephant Oil, for example, we have a shareholder in. We're expecting that listing in America to be effective January or February. We should be within the next 3 months, we should have New Ballarat Gold Corporation, our Australian joint venture, listed. So these will in time begin to generate cash as well. But we can look forward a year and see that we are operating well within our facilities. And not even our facilities, well within our cash and investment.
Okay. Now, how do you see the outlook for commodities, the sector, and Red Rock Resources in the next 6 months?
For the sector, I think that it's somewhat oversold at the moment. I'd expect to see some recovery. But usually when these recoveries come, they're quite discriminating. People will say, yes, the sector will recover, but these are the companies that we think should be focused on. These are the companies which will lead. And the leadership will change. We have to make sure that we're part of that leadership. Every time that I can remember that there's been a rise in commodity prices, particularly gold prices, that has led to an increase in the value of the stocks on the AIM market in the sector, Red Rock has outperformed. So for some reason, we outperform bull markets. And if there's a bull phase coming, we would expect to outperform. But at some stage, the things we've been doing with our major projects, and the value that we'll be able to lay out the results of our geophysics in Kenya, in the east, we're going from IP to pole-dipole IP, so that'll define 2 or 3 distinct target areas. We've got the 3 or 4 established targets in the west. There's one area where it's had 10 diamond holes. We're going to put in just a few more holes, and then we'll be able to get a resource for that area, add that in. As we lay out our wares on Kenya, and we're doing it very carefully, because our thought always is, how can we do this in such a way that since we know majors will be reading the releases as well as small investors, their interest will be that we begin to get a flow of large company interest. So we make sure that we do everything very methodically and very well with extremely high quality while not losing momentum. But the next 2 or 3 months should see considerable number of developments announced in Kenya, because that's already underway. Getting extra resources within the next 6 months, that is certainly either as a result of the current drilling or by going to this old area, drilling a few more holes. That's very much part of our objective and plan. I think in Congo, we will see developments, and I can't speak about that because I'm just about to go there. But I'm very confident in what we've been able to achieve in this short visit to Kenya on the strategic front. And then on the listing side, I think as people start to see the first 1 or 2 of these come through and get listed, the credibility of that strategy will become apparent. And remember, this is a strategy which is to some extent forced upon us, because our shareholders said, we don't want you to be going out and raising a whole lot more money by issuing more shares, because we think the value locked up in some of your existing projects is terrific. And what you need to do Now you've got, can you back it, explore it. Now you've got these other assets is use some of the money you have from your investment portfolio to explore them. So that's what we've been doing. And at the same time, we've been creating out of nothing, ex nihilo, a new business in Australia, new business in Ivory Coast, new business in Burkina Faso, all of which can be listed, and taking forward elephant oil towards listing.
Mm-hmm. Now,
when is this going to go? Sorry, the second part of your question is, when is this going to be reflected in Red Rock's valuation? I don't know. I mean, if you've seen a child with a little red and yellow engine without wheels, a piece of elastic on the front, pulling it, and pull it and pull it, and at first it doesn't move at all. It's a friction. Then quite suddenly it jumps. And this is the way that I have seen in the sector things happen. So we don't know when it will happen, but we have confidence that it will happen.
Okay. Now, is POW still a core holding for Red Rock?
You know, it's always difficult to say when something's a core holding. I think when we were on the Jupiter board and wanted to get the iron ore assets spun out of Jupiter, we regarded that as a core holding because we had that royalty on the iron ore assets that potentially, if it's ever developed, is worth much more than the company. But when we got that spun out earlier in the year, and then when new shareholders were coming in, the business partners in South Africa built up their shareholding, it became apparent that the direction of the company might change, and we started thinking it's not a core shareholding. And then I came off the board, and we were very much more of the opinion it's not a core shareholding, a source of liquidity, which has always been to some degree. Our Metal Resources, Paul and I were in there at the beginning for the turnaround. We rescued the company. The value has increased immeasurably. Is really well situated. It's now, I would say, now that I've come off the board there, as you know, because I was getting so increasingly busy at Red Rock, and I didn't think I could any longer justify calling myself executive in any sense at Power Metal Resources. I think it becomes one of a set of investments. And so you have to look at a balanced portfolio. And yes, we would expect, therefore, to take some money out of that, a little bit overweighted in POW. But we think it's a very fine investment, going to perform exceptionally.
Okay. Now, apparently Andrew suggested the upcoming IPO of Ballarat Gold would attain a market valuation of not less than £20 million. Does he still believe this to be the case?
I certainly believe it can obtain a market valuation of over £20 million because you compare it with some other companies, like, for example, ECR. And I know the work that's been done on the ground. I know the opportunity we have there. But whether that 20 million valuation is before or after listing is, of course, going to be a moot point. If we've been talking about 16 months ago and we listed it then at the height of the market, we could have been talking about a 40 plus million valuation quite easily. If we're talking about it in some other market conditions, we could be saying, well, to be conservative, you float it at 10 million and people offer shares and rely on the market to take it up from there. And everyone is very happy because investors see that it's performed well in the public marketplace. It depends. You know, we'll be guided by market conditions and by our brokers. First Equity are very experienced brokers and how they take good advice. Our financial advisors will all be experienced. And we have people like Paul, who's done this game a few times before as well. So we'll be guided by the markets and what value we can put on it. And of course, the CPR will tell the story. We have to tell the story in the prospectus. We then have to go out and do some marketing, or what means that our people in Australia probably have to do Zoom calls and things because they can't come over here very easily. And we'll see how that goes. But is this, when we look at the comparators, is this worth every bit as much as them or more? Undoubtedly. So we just have to be guided by the market. But either before or after flotation, we will, I'm sure, see valuations as high as or higher than that you speak of.
Okay. Now, in May, it was suggested that the news flow would be thick and fast and there would be corporate activity for Red Rock in 2021 and a number of IPOs, which you have just discussed. As the end of the year approaches, where are we at with the corporate activity and IPOs?
Well, we did see the flotation out of Juno mining in Australia, out of Jupiter, and that's hugely important for us because Jupiter just wasn't going to develop the iron ore assets, and Juno's purpose is to do that. That's where our royalties sit. So that was one thing that we said was going to happen. The other thing that we said, I suppose you could say not corporate activity, but operations activity, 2 drill programs, and then a third in Australia by the end of the year, and geophysics. On corporate activity, certainly the backing of the Australian joint venture into a UK holding company by Gold Corporation, and that moving towards listing, that's important corporate activity. Everyone has been held up in Victoria by the fact that it's been more than 250 days of hard lockdown, but they still keep on going in and out of lockdown. And the fact that we've been able to achieve what we have and get the CPR written and everything, get a staff living on the ground there, able to carry on doing work, there's been nothing short of miraculous. But the other companies that we've set up, corporate activity, yes, we've got the company set up in Ivory Coast that we've already announced, and has got good licenses. We're going to be announcing something on Burkina Faso as soon as we finalize that. We have 1 or 2 other things on the corporate front in other countries, very much related to and bound into what we're doing to announce. And I don't think anyone is going to end up disappointed in terms of what they see us doing.
Okay. Now, there are strong rumours that Red Rock are in negotiation with Caracal Gold with regard to Migori. Would a deal with them be something that you might consider?
Well, it would be very difficult. They've got listed on the standard list, and the standards of disclosure and getting on standards are very different from those we have on AIM. In terms of whether they have the cash to do all this, I don't think they have. And on the question of would we take their paper as it's valued at the moment, I think unquestionably we would not. And therefore, how is a deal to be done? I don't see it. Maybe there's a way around that, but we don't see it. And we think we're making a lot of progress already. And we have certain partnerships there, talking about a new prospect, that we think would be the right way to go.
Okay. Now, this question is, I think, similar to what you've already covered before, but perhaps we could maybe sum up across the Red Rock portfolio. But the question is, a few years back, a previous broker note gave a 4.4p price target. The latest one, a 1.6p price target. Yet we have Kenya back, DRC drilling, Australia on the go, and spin-off from JMS. You're in Kenya now, you're going to the DRC, you say, on Saturday, so you're obviously actively doing stuff. Where do you think the value unlock is going to come from, Andrew?
This is the interesting thing. If we look at the AIM market, I'm not now talking about what ought to happen, but about what actually we observe does happen. The 2 circumstances in which most commonly a price re-rates are, first of all, if the gold price in particular, commodity prices go up, the whole sector rises. And then people's interest is focused there. The excitement level rises, and that causes companies to go up. Secondly, if a company has a reasonable news background and the market is neutral at worst, and it has a placing, and the broker gets 5% instead of 0.5% for buying and selling shares, new investors come in, and there's a bit of an effort to tell the story and keep news flow going, and you can get something happen in the right environment. But again, that's an excitement function. The third thing is, of course, if you have a big discovery or do something absolutely transformational, which in mining market terms is a bit like saying, well, when you win a prize in the lottery, it isn't something that happens every day or happens easily. What we have been doing is building pictures step by step in Kenya, and I think building something step by step in Australia, and preparing 1 or 2 companies like working with the people. We're preparing 1 or 2 companies like Elephant Oil for listing, and eventually there will be crystallization events. But because it's a bit like boiling a frog, is that you can have the heat increase considerably without the frog really being aware. In this case, the investors can watch the company improving and improving, and not really get the sensation the company is improving. So when will it happen? Obviously, we're going to take the first opportunity we get to put together new presentations, go on a big sort of PR drive and get our story across. And one thing that will help there is by increasing the number of our operational management so we can have more people working on these things. And that is our focus at the moment. It was right for us to have a very lean central operation management at a time when cost considerations were paramount because we had very little money and the market was low. But where we are now, the paramount need is to get a recognition of the value that's already there. Because we have plenty of money for the moment, but in the nature of things, within the next 2 or 3 years, we may want to raise more money. And our valuation at that point, not now, not in 6 months, but at that point, our valuation has to be one that means that we're raising money at a value that all existing shareholders are happy with, because it's a lot higher. So we need to have that, we need to be able to intensify our work.
Okay.
That's what we're going to do. So you see, it's not easy to give an answer to that question. It's a kind of, when are you planning to stop beating your wife type question. All I can say is we're very much aware of what the issues are, we're very focused on it, and we're ready and waiting to seize the first opportunity to do the sort of publicity that will get better recognition.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, the final question I've got for you, Andrew, is the company recently raised £1 million from the sale of JMS shares. What are these funds ring-fenced for?
Well, as I say, sorry. We de-geared to the extent of de-gearing. That finishes on the first week or two of November. We're already provisioned for it. We're de-gearing to the extent of £1 million. And we are also, we fully funded and paid for most of drill programs in 2 jurisdictions. And actually, the geophysics itself is not inexpensive. So we've been doing that as well. That's 3 programs. And we have been putting in some funding to the Australian joint venture as it builds up its staffing and prepares for listing. But we would expect to get some pre-IPO finance to lift that burden from us shortly. But that's what the £1 million there was for. So we have run down our cash a bit, and we've got some money out of Jupiter. And as I alluded to, we have other shareholdings where we'll be rebalancing our portfolio and continuing to provide for our immediate needs. And I'd say we're doing so extremely comfortably. So I know that people think that in the AIM market, every company must be on the cusp of doing a placing, or that if one's price goes up a little bit, one would want to do a placing. But that is absolutely not our situation.
Okay. Well, Andrew Bell, the CEO of Red Rock Resources, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And always a pleasure to speak. And I hope that when I come back from this visit to Kenya, and then Congo, and then Côte d'Ivoire, we shall have a whole lot of things that we can talk more about.
Okay, look forward to it.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this Stockbox interview. For more information, interviews and videos, visit our website at stockboxmedia.com or give us a follow on Twitter by searching @StockboxMedia.